President-elect Donald Trump is busy selecting his secretaries of state and defense. Who will he pick? And what can the country and the world expect from a Trump presidency? Experts join us live to weigh in.
And as the fight against the Islamic State intensifies in Iraq and Syria, we'll talk to a retired ambassador about what the new administration will face in the region. This special edition of District Wire News starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Lindsay Maizland.
And I'm Megan Yoder. President-elect Donald Trump is busy selecting his secretaries of state and defense. He met with Mitt Romney and James Mattis in New Jersey over the weekend. Trump and Romney's relationship hasn't all been positive. Last March, Romney called Trump, quote, a phony. Mattis, a retired Marine Corps general, left the military in 2013. Experts say Senator Bob Corker, Rudy Giuliani, and John Bolton are also candidates for Secretary of State.
Iraqi security forces are facing fierce resistance from the Islamic State fighters during their month-long push into Mosul. The Iraqi army, Kurdish Peshmerga, and various Shiite militias are fighting to retake the country's second-largest city from the terror group. The offensive has been bloody. 4 civilians were killed and 4 wounded Saturday when a car bomb exploded before it could hit Iraqi troops in the city. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are trapped in the city, many without food or water. Their presence is complicating the battle. Donald Trump's rhetoric surrounding ISIS and what he calls radical Islam were staples of his stump speech. Can we expect the rhetoric to be indicative of his foreign policy? Or will Republican leaders in Congress be able to control President Trump's actions in the Middle East? Reporter Wes Young has more.
Throughout his campaign, Donald Trump was confident that he alone could defeat ISIS, even insisting that he knew more about the terror organization than U.S. generals. Now that he has been elected, President-elect Trump must put into place many of the policies he campaigned on. In the 2 weeks since the election, he has worked on determining who he will surround himself with when he is making these key military decisions.
And when you look at his key advisors, they are cut from the same cloth, whether it's Steve Bannon or Michael Flynn or Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, or whoever he actually puts into foreign policy positions. These will be people, even if they may have disagreed with him during the campaign, will have to toe the line.
Outside of Trump's actual administration is the Republican-controlled Congress. Historically, the commander-in-chief has found ways to utilize presidential powers to get around congressional approval in military decisions.
I've seen for both President George W. Bush and President Obama, who did, I'm not saying either of them was doing the kind of things that Trump is talking about, but they did things that certainly pushed the limits of presidential power and sometimes exceeded it. Congress did not have a very good record, either Republicans or Democrats, of setting limits on their powers.
If Trump's campaign is any indication of how he makes decisions, experts believe it will be President Trump calling the shots. Despite the counsel of his advisors, experts predict he will hold his beliefs over those of others.
He likes to be the decider-in-chief, and so he's going to basically set the outlines of what his foreign policy agenda is and expect people to be loyal, because loyalty is a very big deal with him.
For District Wire News, I'm Wes Young.
U.S. and Iraqi forces are continuing to fight ISIS in key cities in Iraq. Americans are waiting to see exactly how President-elect Trump will work to defeat ISIS and if he will continue the momentum gained in Mosul. To give us some more details on what these plans could be, we welcome American University's distinguished diplomat in residence, Professor Anthony Quayton. Thanks for being here with me, Professor.
It's good to be here.
So can you first just give me a little bit of an overview of the situation in Iraq currently with ISIS?
Well, the focus, as you know, is on the battle for Mosul, and it's clear that we are winning that battle, but it's a slow process. We can't expect results within hours or days, but there's no question that ISIS will be defeated in Mosul, and that will be a devastating blow to their territorial ambitions.
What specifically are the role of American troops in Mosul?
Well, much of that is highly classified, as you can imagine, but it's clear that we are providing logistic support, intelligence support, helping the Iraqi troops and their allies, because it's not just the Iraqi army that's doing the fighting, with what is necessary in order to understand the enemy and confront the enemy in a way that will lead to ultimate victory.
So what is the situation like for civilians in Mosul right now?
Well, it's got to be horrific. As long as as ISIS is prepared to use civilians as weapons, putting them in the line of fire in order to inhibit the advance of the Iraqi forces, a lot of people are going to die, a lot of innocent people who are collateral damage for a very brutal war.
So obviously there's a big question right now of what Donald Trump will do in this region. We don't know a lot. He hasn't said a lot of specifics on the campaign trail, but we have heard some moments of very unusually incendiary comments, like this one we'll take a look at right now.
Because they have certain oil camps, right? They have certain areas of oil that they took away. They have some in Syria, some in Iraq. I would bomb the of them. I would just bomb those suckers. And that's right. I'd blow up the pipes. I'd blow up the I'd blow up every single inch. There would be nothing left.
So he's talking about, bombing them. I'd blow them up. Is that type of rhetoric just over-the-top campaign speech, or is that indicative of potential policies we could actually see him enforcing?
Well, obviously we don't know. But it's clear that it is the intention of the new administration to take an aggressive stance vis-a-vis ISIS. Part of what has been going on under this administration, under the Obama administration, has been aggressive action using drones, using a variety of technologies to go after ISIS. You can expect more of the same, intensified perhaps, greater level of activity perhaps, but I don't think you can expect any standing down of the American operations against the Islamic State.
So speaking of Obama's policies versus Trump's policies, let's take a look at some comments President-elect Trump has made about Obama's policies.
The rise of ISIS is the direct result of policy decisions made by President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton. Let's look back at the Middle East at the very beginning of 2009, before the Obama-Clinton administration took over. Libya was stable. Syria was under control. Egypt was ruled by a secular president and an ally of the United States. Iraq was experiencing a reduction in violence. The group that would become what we now call ISIS was close to being extinguished.
So he's quite critical of President Obama's policies. And so you say we may still see much of the same. Is there anything we can expect that would be quite different under President Trump?
What is the core of our strategy under this administration, and indeed in terms of what President-elect Trump has said, which is we have to work with others, we have to work with allies. We're already doing that, not only with allies in the region, with Saudi Arabia, with the Gulf states, with the Iraqis, of course, but with other outside powers. Now, who and those allies will be in this administration, whether they'll be different, remains to be seen, but I would anticipate that you're going to see many of the same players. The unusual aspect of the Trump rhetoric is not that he proposes to use and work with allies, but that he sees the Russians and President Putin as a potential ally. That has not been the case in this administration and would be a radical departure in our approach to the effort to defeat ISIS.
So do you think that Trump's policies will be easy for him to enact? Will he have any major roadblocks? I mean, this seems like, this is a major departure, working with Putin. What do you think the ease of actually accomplishing this will be? Nothing
is easy in dealing with ISIS. Nothing is easy in dealing with the other players in the Middle East. So it's not going to be a bed of roses for the president-elect. And there will certainly be pushback from some of our European allies when it comes to working with the Russians. On the other hand, there is a general awareness in the region, among our allies in the Arab world, among those countries that are already engaged, that we must keep up the effort, and that pressure will be brought to bear through diplomatic channels on the new administration. More of the same, maybe, but with a slightly different twist and emphasis.
Are there any tactics that you expect Trump will enact that could be particularly effective?
I'm not a military expert, and so I'm not going to speculate on tactics. I think the interesting question, looking ahead, is whether a particular effort will be made in order to create some kind of safe zone for those in Syria who are fleeing both ISIS and the brutal regime of President Assad in Damascus. That is a question which is still open for discussion. The president-elect has spoken of the need for safe zones, and you may remember that candidate Clinton also indicated that that would have been her priority in her administration.
Thank you so much, Professor. We'll be focusing a bit more on the migrant crisis later in the show. This was Professor Quayton, who is the Distinguished Diplomat in Residence at American University's School of International Service. Coming up, a little under 10,000 Americans are currently deployed to Afghanistan. Experts join us in studio to explain how they predict Donald Trump will handle America's longest war. We'll explore what Trump may or may not do there.